Andrew here, and welcome back to my welding series. Today we're going to be talking about welding fabrication basics. Now most likely I'm going to break this down into 2 or 3 videos because there's really a lot to talk about. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to start things off, I have some of the more common materials that you're going to find when you're working with fabrication projects. We have square tubing and rectangular tubing, as well as pipe and round tubing. We also have angle iron, which is this L-shaped piece here, as well as channel iron, which is this C-shaped or U-shaped piece. These are our flat bars or strip pieces. This is aluminum, stainless steel, and mild steel, as well as solid round stock and solid square stock material. This is plate steel. This is 1/2 inch thick. These are sheet metals. We have mild steel sheet metal, stainless steel sheet metal, and aluminum sheet metal right here. This is referred to as expanded steel or expanded metal. It's basically sheet metal with slits cut into it, and then it's been pulled apart to create this pattern. Here we have perforated steel. This is plate or heavy sheet that's been punched through. It's got lots of holes punched through it. And we also have I-beam or H-beam. This is used primarily for structural situations, buildings and bridges, etc. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a closer look at our materials. Now over here on the left we have 3 examples of 2-inch by 2-inch square tubing. Different thicknesses, as you can see. The 2 on the far left are made of steel, and this one here is aluminum. Now right away you can see a huge difference between the look of the material. The aluminum has very sharp corners, where the steel has nice rounded edges. And you may notice as the material gets thicker, the corners get more rounded. The reason for that is steel tubing and pipe are formed by taking flat sheets like this, and then they're bent into a square form, and then they have a seam welder that comes along and welds that up. Whereas the aluminum is actually extruded. They take a solid piece of aluminum and they push it through a die, and it forces it out in this shape. So there's no seams, there's no welds here. The reason for that is that if you tried to take aluminum sheet and bend it like that, it would just crack and it would become weak on the corners. So that's just not possible. Now back to the corner rounding. Obviously, as these things are being bent, the more material there is, the more of a radius it needs to bend. So that's why the heavier gauge material is going to have a rounder corner. Now this middle piece here is 2-inch by 2-inch by 1/8 inch thick wall. That's a very common sized tubing to be used on ladder racks for pickup trucks, frames for tables, things like that. It's got obviously many other uses, but that's a very common use for that particular size material. As you start getting up into this 1/4 inch thick stuff, that's really almost getting towards structural material. I hate to say structural because structural really is reserved for 3 inches and higher. So if this was 3 inches by 3 inches, then you would technically call that structural steel. And of course the aluminum is going to be similar things that you're going to use this for, except if you want it to be much lighter. Now over to our 1-inch by 1-inch square tubing. This is probably the most common thing that a typical garage DIY kind of guy is going to be using. You know, you got your home shop in your garage, you're just kind of welding around with some MIG. You're going to make a lot of things out of this. In fact, if you're brand new to welding, one of the first things you might want to make yourself is a small cart for your welder, such as this one here. This is made from 1-inch by 1-inch square tubing, just like this one here. Now we also have some rectangular tubing. This is 1-inch by 2-inch. Similar applications as the 2-inch by 2-inch. I've seen a lot of pickup truck racks made out of this material, and just basically similar things. If you just want to be, slightly slimmed down versions of this. Okay, now on to our pipe and round tubing. Here we have a piece of 1.5 inch Schedule 40 steel pipe. And here we have an 1.5 inch piece of tubing. This happens to be stainless steel. Now you may be wondering why these 2 pieces of metal are basically called the same thing, both 1.5 inch pieces of round material, but the tubing is much smaller than the pipe. The reason for that is that pipe is measured by a nominal inside dimension, whereas the tubing is measured by a very precise outside dimension. So this is almost exactly 1.5 inches on the outside, where this is slightly larger than 1.5 inches on the inside. As you can see, they telescope. Now our pipes and round tubings are primarily going to be used for the same things as our squares and rectangles. The exception to that would be our pipe sizes, which are designed with plumbing in mind. They do still make great structural materials though. Now moving on to our angle iron, these are another very commonly used piece of material. You can make frames out of them, legs for tables, things like that. They're very, very useful, very versatile, and they're also measured the same as the tubing. So you would have 1 inch by 1 inch, for example, by 1/8 inch. And we call these legs. Now, the angle iron is typically a 90-degree angle, and they do not always come in even lengths. So you might have a 1/2 inch by 2 inch, or a 3 inch by 4 inch. This happens to be 1 inch by 1 inch. And as you can see, they come in all different sizes and shapes and thicknesses. Now here we have our solid stock material. They come in rounds and squares and rectangles and half circles and all kinds of shapes. They're basically the same as the tubing, except they're solid, as you can see. These smaller size pieces, the squares and little rounds, they're more often used in ornamental situations. Take, for example, this railing section. As you can see, I've been twisting this one. They come out really nice when you heat them, and then you twist them. You get this nice twisted effect. These are often used as stock for bolts and pins and various keys and things that you would need a solid piece of material for. And here we have our flat bars. These are very good to have around, just various sizes, various thicknesses, because it's basically just a clean slate that you can pretty much make anything out of. You can cut things out of them, bend them, fold them, whatever. But otherwise they're just very plain looking and kind of boring. Now this is some plate. This is 1/2 inch thick steel. This can be used for something like a tabletop or a base plate for something. You name it, whatever you need a heavy piece of steel for, this is it. This is our sheet metal, or sheet steel in this case. This is just a good stock to have around. You can bend this and form this into just about anything you want. You can make boxes, you can cut things out of them, cut shapes, make art, whatever you want. There's just infinite possibilities with stuff like this. And of course we have our expanded steel. You guys have probably seen this around. A lot of people use these for barbecue grates and window coverings, or for example, people have headache racks on the back of their truck and they put this across to protect their window from things crashing into it. It's a good thing to have around. It's actually very expensive compared to just regular sheet metal, but you'll end up using it a lot. My welding table is a great example of some of the ways that the materials I just showed you can be used. For example, we have some plate, we have I-beams, we have pipe, angle irons, expanded steel, 1 inch square tubing, angle irons, flat bars, round tubings, etc. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to fabrication tools. Now these are the basic tools that you're going to use as a fabricator on a day-to-day basis. Starting with your measuring tools here, your marking tools, clamping tools, grinding tools, finishing tools, as well as various gripping and banging tools. And of course we cannot forget our material cutting machine, our chop saw in this case. You can also use band saws, but I don't have a band saw. I've fabricated a lot of things with this machine right here. This is a very worthwhile investment. They run about $200 at Home Depot. Highly recommended that you have one of these. Okay guys, well I think that's enough for this video. I'm going to go ahead and cut it right here. The next video we're going to start by actually taking some of the materials and tools that I just showed you, and we're going to start fabricating and welding some parts together. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, share, and favorite. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time.
Are you gonna shoot that?